Dear Scare Mail. On an eerie morning in Whitechapel in 1888, a man by the name of Robert Paul was anxiously making his way to work. His eyes were fixed on his watch, which read the time of 3:45 a.m. Paul was running late, for this reason found himself in an unusual hurry to get to work on time. However, Mr. Paul would surely be late to work that day, for who he was about to encounter would come to be known as one of the most infamous serial killers in history. What's up, guys? My name's Andrew and I run the Scare Mail channel, and today I'm going to tell you the insane, improbable story of how Jack the Ripper, despite being in police custody, escaped capture. And no, this isn't one of those stories where Jack used his wits and snuck out the back as if he's like a member of Ocean's 11. Oh no, certainly not. Although there is a little bit of that. But no, it's actually incompetence and blind luck that allowed Jack to escape all those years ago. And trust me, you're going to hear this story and you're going to wonder how the hell he got away, just like I did. So you're going to want to stick around to the end for this one because it is mind-blowing. But first, if you like ghosts, aliens, cryptids, and other supernatural scary stories, feel free to subscribe to the channel with bell notifications to ensure that your Scare Mail continues to get delivered. Now without further ado, let's get back to the story. Robert Paul paced his way down Buck's Row, focused on the destination far in front of him, until something caught the corner of his eye. A woman lay in the street before him, seemingly unconscious. So Mr. Paul slowly approached the woman to see if everything was alright. Before he could get a good look at the woman lying in the street, Robert was overcome with a feeling of uneasiness, as if he was being watched. About 10 feet away, tucked behind an iron gate, was a mysterious man, heavily breathing as he watched Robert approach the body. Robert, now on alert, called out to see if anyone was there. Realizing that the jig was now up, the man in the shadows slowly came forward to reveal himself. The man was clearly nervous as he approached Robert and appeared completely out of breath before explaining himself. He quickly mentioned that he had just found the body and stepped away momentarily to look for help. At this point, Robert Paul knelt down to get a good look at the body, and at first glance, there was no sign of any blood. He then checked to see if the woman was still breathing, and while he did, the mysterious man continued to hover over him, standing menacingly silent as Robert determined the woman to be deceased. Paul then asked the man if he could help him move the body out from the side of the road, but the man's reaction left Robert at a pause. The man immediately refused to touch the body, and when questioned as to why, the man simply apologized and said he was too unnerved to help. Despite this obvious red flag, Robert Paul understood the man's wariness to get involved, and simply asked him to wait with the body as Paul searched for a police constable. But to no one's surprise, the man refused once again, stating that he was too fearful to be left alone with the body, claiming that the killer could still be close by. Once again, Paul understood the man's reservations, but little did he know just how close the killer really was. Robert Paul and the mysterious man began their walk down the road to hail an officer, and during this time, Robert had become increasingly suspicious of the man walking next to him. The man was sweating profusely, and tried to remain silent for the duration of their 7-minute walk together. Now overly curious, Robert Paul asked him if he had seen anything out of the ordinary before encountering the body. The man simply shook his head and continued to walk alongside Robert, before stating that he was simply on his way to work when he found it, allegedly mere minutes before Robert arrived on the scene. Robert, intending to be friendly with the man, asked what he did for work. The man hesitated for a moment before stating that he was a butcher. This statement immediately sent a chill down Paul's spine, for he was now without a doubt walking with the potential killer. Luckily, they finally encountered a police constable, who they immediately flagged down for help, But before Robert could speak to the constable, the man reminded Paul that he should run along since he was late for work, and that he would explain the situation to the officer. Robert looked at his watch and saw that he had only 5 or so minutes to get to work. So he agreed and went about his business. And as he walked away from the two parties now discussing the case, he gave one last glimpse behind him, a last look at the man who would soon become Britain's most infamous serial killer. Police Constable Jonah Mizen was patrolling his nearby beat on that same fateful night when a man came into his field of view. He immediately called him over for help, and seeing that he looked quite frantic, Mizen immediately knew something was wrong. Walking over from about 30 meters away, the man then held out his hand and introduced himself. His name was Charles Allen Cross, and he informed the officer that there was a woman lying in the street unconscious. Immediately, we know this to be a bold-faced lie. Cross is attempting to downplay the situation to the constable, so there may be no reason to suspect him of any sort of crime. The constable finishes taking Cross's statement and gives him a proper look up and down. At this point, there was nothing suspicious about Cross. He was no longer sweating, and since he didn't touch the body, he had no sign of blood on him or his clothing. So, with that, Constable Mizen thanked Cross for the information, and both went their separate ways. But the story doesn't end there. In an incredible stroke of luck for Cross, Constable Mizen just so happened to find another officer at the scene upon his arrival. The officer he would encounter was Constable Neal, whose beat just so happened to be Bucks Row and other nearby streets. So, not only has Cross safely escaped the scene of his own crime, but he also seemingly told the truth to a constable he reported it to, alleviating all suspicion from his name. And yet, suspicion wouldn't land on Charles Allen Cross until it was too late, when Robert Paul's interview would be posted in the newspaper many days later. Paul would go on to mention that Cross found the body just before he did, which led all signs to Cross being the murderer. And yet, there was a major problem with all of this. You see, there was no Charles Allen Cross, and the address he had given belonged to an unsuspecting family. This was a devastating realization for Constable Mizen. Not only did he have the opportunity to take the alleged killer into custody that very night, but he could have prevented at least 4 more murders that would end up taking place over the next couple of months. It is truly astonishing how Jack the Ripper was able to evade capture that fateful night, considering there were multiple opportunities for him to be apprehended. One might wonder how the stars could align for such an abysmal, disgusting human being such as him, and for that, I have no good answer. Luckily, after all these years, a group of independent investigators banded together and dug through years' worth of census papers to discover the murderer's true identity. And believe me when I say, when you hear his true name, you'll wonder how the police were still unable to capture him, because although his name wasn't Charles Allen Cross, it was instead Charles Allen Lechmere. Charles Allen Lechmere, aka Jack the Ripper. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed yet another crazy story. And if you liked this video, feel free to check out some of our other stuff right here, because they are also very, very wild, and I'm sure you'll enjoy them as well. And I've had a lot going on recently, but I'm looking to get back into the groove of posting weekly, so I appreciate you guys sticking around while I figure it all out. As always, thanks for watching, and good night.